Green Bay with a Lonium Morris Pradium, Ante, Colorado. The acronym is AMPAC. I am the Chief Judge of Constant Court. Today is Class 41. Class 41. What did we learn in Class 40? Well, we started learning about what's called correlations. Correlations to what? Correlations between the Moroccan treaties, more specifically the Act of Algeciras of 1906, and the Charter of the United Nations. And what is that we really started learning? We started learning about what's called the triple principle. The triple principle is what you call the bundle package of what all treaties are about. All treaties about the triple principle that the Sultan set forth on behalf of all Moors to follow and all the signatory powers, i.e. the Christian powers of the world to follow. So what Moors have to understand is that when you read the treaties, you read declarations, you read conventions, you read the charter, everything you're reading is all about the triple principles. So we started understanding about the triple principles. And as Moors start reading declarations, etc., you'll start seeing the triple principles in all of those applications and provisions, all right, of international law. So as Moors start to come into statehood, Moors must start understanding what is our obligation. Our obligation is to enforce the treaties. Treaties, supreme law of the land. But how do you enforce treaties? The only way to enforce treaties is through your state. You must have a Moorish state. Once you have a Moorish state that has its own Moorish flag, has its own seal, oath of allegiance to said state, have your public inauguration, after that, what do? Now you must do what? You must accede and ratify all the treaties through your state and put it on the record through your legislative branch of your government. After that, what do? Then you deposit those treaties with the Secretariat of the United Nations, right? Those are the instructions of both the Sultan of the Act of Algeciras, Chapter 7, Articles 120 to 123. Those are the instructions of the Charter of the United Nations when you start getting into Articles 100, 101, 102, 110, 111, etc. When you read the United Nations Charter, it gives you the same instructions that you must deposit all of your public law as it relates to treaties, conventions, declarations, and your constitution with the United Nations. All right? That must be understood, Moors. Ratification and consent, and then depository. All right? We must start checking the boxes. All right? So in class 40, we left off talking about what's called the Resolution 1514, which is decolonization, right? So that's exactly where we're going to pick up from, all right? Now, as you can see, AMPAC has their constitution up on the screen. Why is that important to understand? Because we must continuously remind the Moors, what is this all about? This is about constitution principles as set forth by the Sultan in 1906. Article 121 talks about constitutional laws and ratification through your constitution, which is your state. And then after that, you must deposit all your treaties, conventions, etc. with the Secretariat. And back then it was Madrid. So AMPAC is always going to start off about our constitution because everything is about constitution. It is the emanating document towards you getting back to being human beings. All right, so Moors are getting back to human being status, and the only way to do that through the matriarchal council of your legislative branch of your government. All right, so let's continue. All right, so we left off on class 40, right? Reading the Declaration of the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples, right? Decolonization. It was called the General Assembly Resolution 1514. You see the XV. 14 December 1960, right? We read this already. Okay, but how did it end? How did it end, Moors? What was the answers to the test? I told you this declaration gives you the answers to the test, Moors. What's the answer to the test? The answer to the test is found in Article 7. Article 1 talks about first you must come back and recognize yourself as being a human being instead of being aliens. Once you recognize you have a nationality, now you must have the quest and understanding how you get back your rights as a Moor. Okay, it tells you in Article 7. Mother, can you read Article 7 for me, please?
All states shall observe faithfully and strictly the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the present declaration on the basis of equality, non-interference in the internal affairs of all states, and respect for the sovereign rights of all peoples and their territorial integrity.
Okay, so this is where we left off, right? So what's the answer to the test, Morris? The word what? States. All states. The Declaration is trying to tell the Moors, you have to get back into statehood. Everything you read in international law is always about statehood. Why is that? Because those are the instructions. Moors have to follow instructions. Why do the colonists all have states around the world? Because they're following the instructions of the Sultan. That's the truth. Okay, here we go. All states shall observe faithfully and strictly the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations. So Moors must observe the Charter as well. Why? Because the Charter is a Moroccan document. It's talking about your trust. And when you come into statehood, all states have to play by the same rules. It maintains equality around the world. All right? Consider the Charter and its organs as an HR department, compliance department. They're just regulators. They're referees. Okay? Maintain the universal declarations of human rights and present declarations on the basis of equality. What's the equality about? The triple principles. What's the triple principles? Act Algeciras 1906. In the preamble, you find the triple principles. It's about what? The triple principles of what? Sovereignty and independence. Of who? State rights. What's the other triple principle? Integrity of domains. That's the second one. Right? What's the integrity of domains? Those are the national estates. That's the trust. The nationals coming together with our estates. That's Moors coming back into a collective. All right? To lay claim to our state through the state. Okay? And number 3, economic liberty without any inequality. There cannot be any inequality. So as you can see, equality, must maintain equality. They're talking about the triple principles. Okay? Now right here, non-interference in internal affairs of all states. So the colonists cannot interfere in our states. That must be understood, Moors. State rights always prevail as long as the state is maintaining what you call international law. Peremptory norms of international law, just cogents. Moors have to study international law. Okay? And respect for the sovereign rights of all peoples and their territorial integrity. So in class 40, I mentioned about we were going to get into what's called France versus United States of America, right? I mentioned that. This is a key case that Moors can study to really start understanding how do you utilize the triple principle. The triple principle is all in France versus the United States of America, okay? The triple principle, okay, of 1952, okay? So what we're going to do is this. The Moors have to understand that France versus the United States of America is really about what? It's about this. France versus the United States of America, 1952, which is the ICJ report. What is it about? It's about stateless Moors. It's about a Moor that has capitulated to a protege and subject status because you're stateless. About Moors that are in breach of their own treaties. That's what France versus the United States of America is about. What else is it about? It's about Moors that are in breach of the triple principle. Moors aren't maintaining the triple principle because we haven't come back into state rights. We haven't come together as nationals of our state to make the claim to the trust. And everything we've been doing is about inequality. We're not maintaining equality because we're not getting into state rights. Once we have state rights, now we're getting into equality. We must do things in like manner. So therefore, we can't make claims until we have states. Until we have states, we're doing everything out of sequential order. That's the truth. What else is happening? France versus United States of America, 1952 is about what? Moors not in honor of their ancient mothers. What am I saying? France and the United States of America were both at the ICJ using Moroccan treaties for their defense and their offense to make claims to their rights. And the only reason why they were able to get away with that is because the Moors were not there to represent themselves. Because the Moors have been cast out as aliens. The Moors lost knowledge of self. So therefore, when we lost knowledge of self and we were ran out of government, we were not able to make a competent claim to statehood. So therefore, France versus United States of America, they're sitting there talking about your Moroccan treaties. Why? Because they knew that you were stateless and you couldn't come and represent yourself. So everything that France versus United States of America is all about is about the fact that the Moors have capitulated to being the protected party. That's what protege means, protected party. And subject status because you're stateless. I'll continuously prove that. Okay, so that's what France versus United States of America is all about, 1952. Now, let's get into what's called some context. Let's get into a little bit of law and history before we start reading over France versus United States of America again. We've gone through France versus United States of America, but we need to take a step backwards. And then we're going to go forward back into France versus United States of America, 1952. What are we going backwards to? We're going to go back to when France and United States of America was already having disputes as it relates to Moors. We're going to go back to what's called 1912, 1913, and 1914. We're going back into history. Then we're going to build back up to 1952. All right? So for the purpose of the class, when we go to 1912, what's called the Treaty of Fez, 1912. Now, I want Moors to keep this in mind. Why France is making a claim to the Moroccan Empire. Why? Because Moors are stateless. Okay? All right, let's get into some substance before we get into France versus United States of America. Okay. For Moors at home who are not familiar with this, this is the Protectorate Treaty between France and Morocco. Signed at Fez, F-E-Z, sometimes you'll find it as F-E-S. Signed at Fez on March 30th, 1912. So France is now sitting down with the Sultan, but because the Sultan at this time had became slightly belligerent. The Sultan's bringing in the money because 1906 Act Algeciras had already passed, 1906. Now the Sultan's bringing in commerce. He has a lot of power. Now the signatory powers, the Christian powers, are saying, look, the Sultan's a little out of control. So now they bring in France. France is, okay, I'll work with the Sultan. We'll try to rein in the order again. So the other Christian powers trusted France to come in and start helping the Sultan to get back into competency, okay? So France now signs a treaty with the Sultan in 1912. This is after the Act Algeciras 1906 has been fully ratified, okay? Proper context, all right? Now we're in the year 1912, okay? So let's go ahead and read the preamble so we get a basic concept and context of what's happening. Okay, Mother?
The government of the French Republic and the government of His Sharifian Majesty, desirous of inaugurating a regular regime in Morocco based upon internal order and general security, which will make it possible to introduce reforms and to ensure the economic development of the country, have agreed upon the following.
Okay, so we already talking about economic development. This word economic keeps coming up, right? Economics. Okay, here we go. Article 1. We only have 9 articles. Let's go.
Article 1. The government of the French Republic and His Majesty the Sultan have agreed to establish in Morocco a new regime comprising the administrative, judicial, educational, economic, financial, and military reforms which the French government may see fit to introduce within the Moroccan territory.
Okay, so France now is taking over for the Sultan. France is acting as a vice Sultan. We've gone through this before, okay? But in understanding what's called France versus the United States of America, we got to build back up to it. We got to refresh ourselves, okay? There's a lot of information of what happened in 1912, 1913, and 1914 before what happened in 1950 and 1952. It's a lot of build-up. France is making a lot of claims, okay? So we're building up. France is taking over the Moroccan treaties through this treaty, okay? Continue.
This regime shall safeguard the religious status, the respect and traditional prestige of the Sultan, to the exercise of the Mohammedan religion and of all religious institutions, in particular those of the Habas. It shall include the organization of a reformed Sharifian Makhzen.
Okay. Remember what I told you more. Sharifian, Makhzen, right? Those are just governments, okay? These are just different words, semantics as it relates to government. Sharifian means government. Makhzen means government, okay? Continue.
The government of the Republic will come to an understanding with the Spanish government regarding the interests which this government derives from its geographical position and territorial possessions on the Moroccan coast. In like manner, the city of Tangier shall retain its recognized distinctive characteristic, which will determine its municipal organization.
Okay, Article 2.
Article 2. His Majesty the Sultan agrees that henceforth the French government, subject to prior notification to the Makhzen, may proceed to such military occupation of the Moroccan territory as it may deem necessary for the maintenance of good order and the security of commercial transactions, and may exercise every police supervision on land and within the Moroccan waters.
Okay, you gotta understand Article 2. The Sultan just gave France military power over the Moroccan treaties, that's including the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, and over the entire empire of Morocco. So therefore, what did the Sultan just give France? Gave France dominion over what you call modern day in 1912. The Sultan gave France dominion over the entire Moroccan empire as a vice sultan. 1912, you got to understand where we're going with this. This is why France and United States of America don't get along, because France found ways to partner up with the Sultan, and the Sultan had dominion over all the Moroccan treaties and the Moors. Whether the Moors were stateless or the Moors understood their state rights. France just took control of all the northwest of Mexico. Okay, let's continue. Article 3. Try to put things in proper context, Morris. Keep up with me. Article 3.
The government of the Republic pledges itself to lend constant support to His Sharifian Majesty against all dangers which might threaten his person or throne or endanger the tranquility of his states. The same support shall be given the heir to the throne and his successors.
Okay, stop. Now wait a minute. In the Treaty of Fez 1912, Article 3, it's talking about what? States. The Moors must understand this word state is not a new word that's being used. It might be new to Moors in the 21st century. But the word state has been around a long time. It's been around since the 1500s. And right here, you're already learning quite quickly that the Sultan had states. He was also overseeing the colonial states. All the states belong to him, because all the states are in the dominion of Morocco, the Sharifian Empire, the Moroccan Empire. So as we're learning already in Article 3, the government of the Republic pledges itself to lend constant support to His Sharifian Majesty. What republic? The French Republic. Is lending support to His Sharifian Majesty against all dangers which might threaten his person or throne or endanger tranquility of his states. The same support shall be given the heir to the throne and his successors. So France is now getting involved. They're digging in. They're getting entrenched. They're integrating themselves right into Moroccan law. Let's continue. Article 4.
Such measures as the new regime of the protectorate may require shall be established by decree upon the proposal of the French government by his Sharifian Majesty or the authorities to whom he may have delegated his power. The same procedures shall be observed in the matter of new regulations and of modifications for the existing regulations.
Okay, you got to really pay attention to what's happening. The Sultan's now giving permission to France to come in and make any addendums, revisions to the jurisdiction of the empire. The Sultan's giving France power of attorney to start making changes. Okay, that must be understood. France is getting a lot of power here. Let's continue. Article 5.
The French government shall be represented to his Sharifian Majesty by a commissioner, resident general, representative of all the power of the Republic in Morocco, who shall attend to the execution of the present agreement. The commissioner, resident general, shall be the sole intermediary between the Sultan and foreign representatives and in the relations which these representatives maintain with the Moroccan government. In particular, he shall have charge of all matters relating to foreigners in the Sharifian Empire. He shall have the power to approve and promulgate on behalf of the French government all the decrees issued by his Sharifian Majesty.
Are you seeing what's happening, Morris? France is taking over control of the Moroccan Empire.
So he's like become the Sultan.
He is becoming a vice sultan because the Sultan never gave up his sovereignty, but the Sultan gave the pen to France. That must be understood. Let's go back and read it. You got to comprehend what just happened. This is one of the most important articles, one of the most important articles. Go back to Article 5. Okay. Article 5. You got to listen very closely more. This is important to understand. Article 5 is telling all the signatory powers, especially the United States of America, that France has 99% control of all the Moroccan treaties. Listen. Article 5, the French government shall be represented to his Sharifian Majesty by a commissioner resident. So France is taking over, i.e. like a power of attorney. General representative of all the power of the Republic. Okay, hold up. Make sure Morris can see it. What? France is doing what? Is the representative of all the power of the Republic. What Republic? The Moroccan Empire. In Morocco. Let's say it again. France got control of what? Of all the power of the Republic in Morocco, who shall attend to the execution of the present agreement. Let's continue. The Commissioner Resident General shall be the sole intermediary between the Sultan and the foreign representatives. Who's the foreign representative? United States of America, etc. And then the relations with these representatives maintained with the Moroccan government. In particular, he shall have charge of all matters relating to foreigners in the Sharifian Empire. Why is that sentence in there? Because France is letting the United States of America know, yeah, here we come. We're going to come over to the United States jurisdiction because France knows the United States of America is where? In Morocco. He shall have the power to approve and promulgate on behalf of the French government all the decrees issued by his Sharifian Majesty. France got the pen, they're controlling all treaties. In Morocco. Let's continue. Article 6. Listen, Morris, this is about you. Okay, time out. Time out. Okay, remember, what do we learn about? We're learning about France versus United States of America, 1952. However, what's all this fuss about? It's about stateless Moors. France wants to get a hold to the stateless Moors. That's what they want. Why? Because the Moors control the estate. Even though they're in a shallow grave, they're still alive. And the Moors are walking around signing everything and don't know it. Moors are walking around giving permission to the colonists to control the vast estate and the trust. And France knows it. So France has now already got the kingdom of Morocco on lock over in Africa. So they're controlling the jurisdiction of Africa, right? Now they're coming over to the continent of America. Now they want to control America. France is using all of the tactics of chess. Okay, Article 6 is about what? It's about what? When we get ready to read, it's about stateless Moors. Keep that in mind as you start reading Article 6. Okay, Mother.
The diplomatic and consular agents of France shall be charged with the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects and interests abroad.
Stop. Did you catch it, Morris? Okay, let's try it again. Article 6. The diplomatic and consular agents of France shall be charged with the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects. Who are the Moroccan subjects? Moors. The proteges, the subjects. If so, jure, Moor subjects are citizens of the United States of America. Black Moors are citizens of the United States of America. Stateless Moors are citizens of the United States of America. Sovereign citizens are citizens of the United States of America. France is coming over saying, we're going to go over there and now take over the protections of these stateless Moors, who are now branded as subjects. Where? Abroad.
Where's abroad?
Oh, abroad is where? Where's abroad? What is France talking about when they say abroad? Okay. That's abroad. Remember, France is standing in fast at this time when he's signing it. When they say abroad, what are they talking about? Right here. Okay? All right. Let's go back.
The stateless Moors in the location of the United States.
Yes. Okay, let's go back. So stateless Moors are here because they've been colonized, right? However, France knows that it's really this. That's what France knows. But France also knows that it's been colonized and that these colonists owe taxes. So France was to come in, oversee the jurisdiction, and start collecting those taxes. I'll prove that to you today. Okay, Article 6. The diplomatic and consular agents of France shall be charged with the representation and protection of the Moroccan subjects. Who are the subjects? Moors. I showed you that. Who are you? You're Moors. A Moor that has capitulated to a protege and subject status because you're stateless. That's why France is making claims, because the Moors wasn't protecting their own rights. Okay, Mother, if you continue.
Article 6.
Mm-hmm.
The diplomatic and consular agents of France shall be charged with the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects and interests abroad. His Majesty the Sultan pledges himself not to conclude any act of an international nature without the previous approval of the French Republic.
You see what just happened? The Sultan gave France the pen. Mm-hmm. And France is like, yeah, I'm going to tell the United States of America, you owe taxes. And I'm going to take over the protections of the Moors. Okay? What's happening? all the colonists are fighting over the Moroccan estate. All the colonists want access to what belongs to the Moors. All of them. Okay, let's go on to Article 7.
The government of the French Republic and the government of His Sharifian Majesty reserve unto themselves the right to determine by mutual agreement the basis of a financial reorganization which, representing the rights conferred upon bondholders of the Moroccan public loans, shall make it possible to guarantee the commitments of the Sharifian treasury and to collect regularly the revenues of the empire.
You see what's happening? Treaties are about what? Amity and commerce. France is coming in to secure the bag. What bag? The treasury. What treasury? The Moorish treasury. You learn about the Moorish treasury in the Act Algeciras 1906. The Moroccan bank was about the Moorish treasury. Okay? So France is coming in to secure the money as well. Okay, Article 8.
His Sharifian Majesty declares that in future he will refrain from contracting, directly or indirectly, any public or private loan, and from granting in any form whatever, any concession without the authorization of the French government.
Okay. The Sultan's giving up the pen. It's becoming redundant now, right?
Yeah.
Why is it being redundant? Because France already knew when they brought this treaty over to the United States of America, they knew the United States of America was going to try to reject certain provisions. So therefore, it's being redundant to make sure the United States of America understood that France had dominion, had the power of attorney, had the authority, the competent authority, to oversee all Moroccan treaties, which meant they controlled the destiny of the citizens of the United States. Article 9.
The present treaty shall be submitted to the government of the French Republic for ratification, and the instrument of the said ratification shall be handed without delay to His Majesty the Sultan.
Thank you. All right, so what just happened? Listen, Moors. Listen, these are instructions. The present treaty shall be submitted to the government of the French Republic for ratification, and the instrument of the said ratification shall be handed without delay to His Majesty the Sultan. What's happening? Because of the Act of Algeciras, based upon the triple principles, you go to chapter 7, articles 120 to 123, talks about the instructions. You must do what? Ratify through your state and then deposit. So France is following the instructions of the triple principles of the Act of Algeciras, chapter 7. So they went back and ratified through the French state. And what did they do after that? Deposit that with the Sultan. Moors got to follow instructions. This is why I tell Moors, you cannot enforce constitutions, you cannot enforce treaties, you cannot enforce conventions, you can't enforce declarations. Why? Because Moors are stateless. Once you come back in statehood, then you must ratify and consent. After that, deposit with the Secretary of the United Nations. If you haven't done that, then you can't enforce treaties. Even France recognized they couldn't enforce the treaty until they ratified it. Moors will have to follow instructions of statehood because the Sultan has already set forth. All right? Okay, Moors. For Moors doing research, a lot of Moors are probably familiar with this, but for Moors who are not familiar with it, this is called Morocco. The French protectorate in Morocco, relinquishment of extraterritorial jurisdiction by certain foreign powers, attitude of the United States. Okay? So what's happening? The United States of America put this title on there, okay? This is their public law. We're going to read their public law, what they had on their Library of Congress, etc., right? Okay? You can find this information also on what's called the Office of the Historian. So if you go to Google, look through the Office of the Historian, you can find these documents as well, all right? All right. The French ambassador to the Secretary of State, okay? So now we're going to start opening up and learning more about how France came over to the United States, started making demands, because now they're overseeing the treaties. So you see right here, Morris, it says, Mr. Secretary of State. Now this might not be as clear to the Moors watching at home, our subscribers, but Moors have to go back and get this document and read along, okay? So as you can see, we'll start reading. This is France opening up first. Then we're going to see the Secretary of State of the United States of America second will respond, okay? Okay, so this is France opening up, okay? So it says right here, French Embassy. French Embassy is ready to open up. Okay, mother, you can start here.
Mr. Secretary of State, by order of my government, I have the honor to communicate herewith to Your Excellency the text of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty that was signed at Fez on March 30, 1912.
Stop. Okay. So what are we doing immediately? Okay, let's get proper context. What's the date? January 8, 1913. Now they're sitting in Washington. January 8, 1913. Who came out in 1913? Noble Ali, right? Yeah. So here comes France in 1913. Here comes Noble Ali in 1913. Okay? Let's continue. So right here, by order of my government, I have the honor to communicate herewith to Your Excellency the text of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty that was signed at Fez on March 30, 1912. Right? So France is letting them know immediately their delegation authority came directly from the Sultan. Okay? Let's continue. Okay?
The assurances Your Excellency was pleased to give me heretofore as to the establishment of the French Protectorate in Morocco led me to hope that the federal government will see no objection to giving its adhesion to that instrument. The French government would be glad to be so assured. Your Excellency will note that under Article 6 of the aforesaid treaty, the diplomatic and consular officers of France will be in charge of the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects and interests abroad. Stop.
So France comes over January 1913. The first words out of France's mouth is what? Yeah, I'm here to talk to y'all about the Moors. Because they mention what? Article 6 of what? The Treaty of Fez. Let's go back. Proper context. Let's go back. Context matters. Context. Let's go. Moors got to learn your history. You got to understand that France, the United States of America, has been fighting over your estate for a long time because Moors have been stateless. Article 6, Treaty of Fez, 1912. The diplomatic and consular agents of France shall be charged with the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects and interests abroad. So now France is going where? Abroad. Where's abroad? They went over to North America. Okay, let's go back. So first words out of France's mouth. What are they concerned about? Your Excellency will note that under Article 6 of the aforesaid treaty, Treaty of Fez, 1912, the diplomatic and consular officers of France will be in charge of the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects, in charge of Moors, stateless Moors, and interests abroad.
Money.
France come to collect the money and get control over the Moors. Why? Because the Moors is the Holy Grail. The Moors is the secret trust. You must understand, France is taking a power move to take over all the trade routes. That's what this thing is all about, trade. Amity and commerce is about trade. So if this is so important to France, it should be just as important to Moors to understand. If France thinks that these treaties are important, so should Moors. Moors will keep studying treaties and understand it keeps talking about states. The word state is everywhere in the treaties. Moors just been pronouncing words and not understanding how to use the treaties, and the treaties about statehood. Let's continue. All right. Let's scroll on down. All right.
A limitation, however, was put upon the provision by the Franco-Spanish Treaty of November 27th last, of which I had the honor to communicate to the Department of State on the 29th of the same month. Article 23 of that treaty provides that the Moroccan subjects belonging in the zone of Spanish influence shall be placed abroad under the protection of the diplomatic and consular officers of Spain.
Okay, so now Spain's getting in it, right? Because Spain's got some control of the Moors too. You have to remember that Spain was making claims in Morocco at one time. The kingdom of Morocco was split between Spain, France, and the Sultan. Not to forget that the Amazigh people, i.e. the people branded as Berbers, also were there. There's a lot of jurisdictions going on in what they call the modern Kingdom of Morocco, right? So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of reference points in this document that they're talking about. Okay, let me stop right here. Why are we really reading this? A, I'm trying to show you that all the Christian powers know the Moors are stateless. B, watch how the Europeans are using the Moroccan treaties for their defense and their offense. Norbert Ali said he's going to leave the Europeans here long enough to teach us government. What are they teaching us in these documents? How to utilize the treaties. Treaty is the supreme law of the land. So we must understand, as we're reading this, start looking at the chess game that's going on between France and the United States of America. Whoever controls the treaties controls the laws and the wealth. Because the treaty is the supreme law of the land. She who controls the land controls its laws and its wealth. France is controlling the land through the treaties. Now they want to come over and talk about what? The laws and the wealth. You're going to learn that. That's why we're reading this. This is AMPAC study session. What are we studying here? International law on how to enforce your treaties. Watch how the Europeans are enforcing Moroccan treaties. Pay attention. What is this about? Stateless Moors. Because the Moors are the sacred trust. What is the sacred trust? Our treaties and our land. Let's continue. Okay, before we start reading, now what's going to happen? Now the United States is getting ready to start talking. Okay? This is their rebuttal to France. Okay? All right, now let's look at the dates. January 22nd, 1913. All right? So France comes over, January, I think it was 8th. Now, the United States is now responding January 22nd. Okay? Let's continue.
Okay. Excellency, I have the honor to acknowledge the receipt of Your Excellency's note of the 8th instant transmitting the text of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty signed at Fez on March 30, 1912, and asking the adhesion of the government of the United States thereto. Following the traditional American foreign policy, which forbids participation by the United States in the settlement of political questions which are entirely European in their scope, the government must refrain from any expression of opinion for or against such part or parts of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty as may be deemed of a political nature.
Stop. What just happened? What do Moors learn from this? Listen to how the United States of America is utilizing the treaty to their defense. They're saying United States of America can't have any interest in the political matters of Morocco. Remember, we learned that in the Act of Algeciras of 1906 and what's called the proclamation made by the President of the United States said they cannot have any political interest in the affairs of Morocco. So now listen, now they're repeating it. This is United States of America saying this. Okay? Listen. Following the tradition of American foreign policy, which forbids participation by the United States in the settlement of political questions which are entirely European in their scope, the government must refrain from any expression of opinion for or against such part or parts of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty as may be deemed of political nature. What do we learn from that? So Moors start to restore their states. Guess what? The United States of America cannot have any question or any say anything about the political interests of Moorish states in Morocco. It's all about jurisdiction. The United States of America knows this. They're telling you the answers to the test more. This is what you say to the United States of America when they start to get you pushback about your state. You say, excuse me, according to your obligations, you can't have any political question about our political state rights. Let's continue.
Paragraph 1 of Article 1 of this treaty provides that the government of the French Republic and His Majesty the Sultan mutually agree to establish in Morocco such administrative, judicial, educational, economical, financial, and military reforms as the French government may deem it desirable to introduce in Moroccan territory. And further, paragraph 2, Article 5, provides that the French commissioner resident shall be the sole intermediary of the Sultan in all foreign relations. By the terms of Article 1, the government of the French Republic practically assumes all the powers of government in Morocco, and as a natural corollary thereto, it assumes also the obligations of the Moroccan government in its relations with foreign governments, insofar as existing treaty rights between Morocco and foreign governments are concerned.
Stop. All right. So the United States of America is summarizing. They're recognizing what's happening. France just took over the treaties. And then France got some control over the military. France got control over the land, the air, and the water, i.e. the law. They've taken over maritime law. France has taken over maritime law, and France has taken over admiralty law. You must see what's happening. Okay? All right, let's continue.
Where am I? As your Excellency is aware, adhesion on the part of the government of the United States to any treaty under our Constitution can only be given by and with the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate. And after careful consideration of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty, this government is of the opinion that it is not sufficiently detailed and concrete in its provisions to permit of submission to this country's treaty-making power.
All right, stop. So what's happening? The United States, the first thing they always pull out of their bags of tricks is do what? Stall, deny, and defend. They're sitting here looking at a treaty signed by the Sultan. A treaty that gave all the powers to France. And the United States of America reads and says, well, it looks good, but it's questionable. So we're going to stall, deny, and defend. What's happening? The United States of America got to figure out how they're going to deal with it. They always got to go back and try to figure out a plan on how they're going to undermine something or how they're going to try to negotiate different terms. Okay? That's why Moors have to stick to what's called the strict sense of the treaties, because the United States of America is always going to try to get you to undermine your own treaty rights that are already what's called well-settled principles. So when France keeps talking about adhesion, they're saying the United States of America should adhere to said treaty through ratification and depository. Okay.
Provided, however, the government of the French Republic is willing to give its assurance that American interests and rights in Morocco are at present safeguarded by existing treaties, shall continue to receive the same consideration in the future as they have been entitled to and have enjoyed in the past. On such an understanding, the government of the United States would be inclined to view with favor the reforms which the French Protectorate contemplate introducing into Morocco as provided for in the treaty in question.
Okay, what's happening? The United States is trying to negotiate their way out of the treaty and create different terms and conditions. They can't do it. However, they're asking that it's up to France and the Sultan to accept the United States' opinion, right? So what's happening? Let's get the proper concept and context of what's happening right here. Why would the United States of America even be talking to France about something that's going on in Morocco if, in fact, the United States of America was not in Morocco? They wouldn't care about what France and the king of Morocco got going on way over there in Africa. It's because the United States of America is in Morocco. That must be understood. And France is coming over to let them know we're going to enforce these treaties on you. Let's listen. Provided, however, listen, the United States of America talking saying, however, we'll agree to the terms of the treaty, but you got to give us some what? Assurances about what? So they can hold on to the Moors and hold on to real estate. You're going to learn about that. Provided, however, the government of the French Republic is willing to give its assurances that American interests and rights in Morocco, are at present safeguarded by existing treaties, shall continue to receive the same considerations in the future as they have been entitled to and have enjoyed in the past. On such an understanding, the government of the United States will be inclined to view with favor the reforms which the French protectorate contemplate introducing into Morocco as provided for in the treaty in question. What's happening? The United States of America doesn't want to lose holding on to the Moors, the stateless Moors. The United States doesn't want to pay any taxes. This is all about amity and commerce, and France, they know France is coming over to now free the Moors and then start collecting taxes. So the United States of America is trying to negotiate to make sure they can still hold on to past agreements. Then that would totally undermine the new Treaty of Fez. What's the purpose of France coming over and talking about the Treaty of Fez if the United States of America say, yeah, that treaty sounds good, but can we hold on to all the past stuff we've done? That don't even make no sense. Let's continue. Okay, now we're into October 1913. Now we're in October 1913. Okay. Now, this is France coming back as a rebuttal. Okay? Proper context. Here comes France. Okay, Mom.
Mr. Secretary of State, by order of my government, I have the honor to forward herewith to Your Excellency 2 copies of the official bulletin of the Morocco Protectorate promulgating the new judiciary system in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire, together with a copy of the Journal Officiel of the French Republic of September 9, 1913, which also contains the decree relating to that organization.
Okay, so what's France doing? France is now changing legislation in Morocco, abroad. Where's the abroad? You're standing on it. The abroad is Morocco that you're standing on right now, and France is coming over, changing legislation, switching over judicial responsibility of consular court, etc. France is taking over. The United States of America is starting to panic. How do I know they're panicking? Okay, what happened in 1913 other than Noble Drew Ali coming on the scene? Jekyll Island, right? So what happened? At Jekyll Island, what happened? The Federal Reserve Act of 1913, right? So the United States of America is panicking because they know France is coming for the estate. So the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Now the administrators are now trying to move the estate around so they keep claim to what they consider their assets, their property, their chattel. They're panicking. Let's continue. Okay, Mother.
The new judiciary system, instituted by virtue of the provisions in paragraph 2 of Article 9 of the Franco-German Treaty of November 4, 1911, is intended to supersede the French consular courts on and after October 15, 1913. In accordance with the provisions of the aforesaid article, I have been instructed to ask the federal government to place its citizens under the new jurisdiction. I shall hasten to forward to my government the reply Your Excellency will be so good as to return to me on the subject.
Okay, so what just happened? The United States of America had asked France about some assurances, and France ignored it. France said, okay, here's our letter. We're moving forward. France said, okay, we're going to start checking boxes. We're moving forward. We're not listening to the United States of America. The treaty signed already. We're changing judicial. We're changing consular court. Now Germany's taking over consular court. Okay? That must be understood. We're talking about that another day, about Germany and its consular court in 1914. Okay? Let's continue. Okay, now we're at a different date. Now we're February 1914. Okay, different date. Now we're in 1914. Okay, mother? Okay, now this is rebuttal of who? United States is going to start talking again, okay? Proper context.
Okay. Excellency, the department has the honor to make reply to the embassy's notes of August 29, September 14, October 7, and January 7 last, relative to the establishment of the French protectorate in Morocco and the revision of the list of American protégés in that country.
Stop. To the United States of America is worried about these Moors. Listen. The department has the honor to make reply to the embassy's notes of August 29, September 14, October 7, and January 7 last, relative to the establishment of the French protectorate in Morocco and the revision of the list of American protégés in that country. What does this mean, American protégés? See, a lot of Moors think that they're Americans. Moors are not Americans. Moors are just simply protégés of the Americans. Who are the Americans? The Sultan allowed the colonists to be the Americans. Moors got to get back to the treaties and read the treaties. The treaties never refer to Moors as being Americans. So what they're saying right here, the protégés, which are who? The protected Moors who are stateless, are the protégés of the jurisdiction of the American. Who's the American? United States of America. The colonists. And Moors are in a protégé status. In what? In that country. What country? America. It's a jurisdiction. It's a political jurisdiction. It's an overlay over top of Morocco. Protégés, the protected Moors who are stateless. Ipso jure Moor subjects are protégés. Sovereign citizen Moors are protégés. Black Moors are protégés. Stateless Moors are protégés of America's jurisdiction. That must be understood, Moors. Let's continue.
In the first note above mentioned, the department is informed in relation to. In the first note above mentioned, the department is informed in relation to the establishment of the French protectorate that owing to the inadequacy of the means theretofore employed to prevent the smuggling of arms and munitions of war into Morocco, General Loyalty had decided to declare martial law within the zone of French influence in Morocco in the matter of contraband of arms. In the formal note of September 14, Mr. Peretti, who was then acting as charge d'affaires ad interim, made known the wish of his government that this government would give instructions to its representative at Tangier, looking to the designation of a delegate to assist in the revision of the protection list of people lying under the American jurisdiction.
Stop. Okay. So you're talking about what? All right. Talking about this what? A delegate to assist in the revision of the protection list. What's the protection list? If so, jure more subjects on a list according to the Treaty of what? Treaty of Madrid, 1880. They talked about a list of protégés, which are Moors that are stateless. Of people lying under the American jurisdiction. American jurisdiction. Moors have to understand that when you're stateless, by default, you come under the American jurisdiction. Because this whole thing is about states. Treaties is about state rights. And when Moors are stateless, we automatically come under the American jurisdiction. That must be understood, Moors. Okay, Mother, you continue from here, Mr. Peretti.
Mr. Peretti added that it was not possible to accept the reserve of the United States relative to the right of foreign representatives to act in the last resort upon the decision of the Maxim in regard to the natives who should enjoy the protection of a foreign government.
Stop. So this last sentence. Mr. Peretti added that it was not possible to accept the reserve of the United States relative to the right of foreign representatives to act in the last resort upon the decision of the Maxim in regard to the natives. Who are the natives? The Moors. Who should enjoy the protection of a foreign government. Who's the foreign government? The United States of America is now doing what? They're saying that the natives enjoy protections from a foreign government. If so, your more subjects are enjoying protections from a foreign government. Now keep in mind now, this is 1914 this is happening. So what's the United States of America trying to say? Leave these Moors alone, they're all right. Leave our coloreds alone. They're going to be all right. France, leave them alone. Why? Because the United States of America knows if they lose control of the Moors, the sleeping Moors, to another French government or any other government, the United States of America loses control of the trade routes. They lose control over the golden goose. They're trying to hold on to the golden goose. They're trying to hold on to the sacred trust, which is these Moors who think they're Negro, black, and colored. To these Moors who think they're citizens of the United States.
With his note of October 7, Mr. Peretti transmitted to the department copies of the official bulletin of the Morocco Protectorate, promulgating the new judiciary system in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. Mr. Peretti called attention to the fact that the new judiciary system was intended to supersede the French consular courts on and after October 15, 1913, and under instructions asked this government to place its citizens under the new jurisdiction. Finally, with your note of the 7th of January last, you transmitted to the department a list of errata in the Bulletin Officiel and requested that the new French courts in Morocco be recognized at the earliest possible date.
Stop. So what's happening? France is taking over consular court, but they know Germany is going to take over consular court in that same year, 1914. We'll talk about that another day. But France is taking over the pen, taking over consular court, taking over all judiciary, taking over all legislation. And they're asking the United States of America to let their citizens know about what? That now they come under a new system. Okay, let's read about it. All right. Let's move up a little bit. Let's go up a little bit. All right. Right here. With his note of October 7th, Mr. Peretti transmitted to the department copies of the official bulletin of Morocco Protectorate, promulgating the new judiciary system in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. Mr. Peretti called attention to the fact that the new judiciary system was intended to supersede the French consular courts on and after October 15, 1913, and under instructions asked this government to place its citizens under the new jurisdiction. This is United States of America talking. Citizens came under a new jurisdiction. So the United States of America knows that they are subordinate to the treaties. They know those treaties affect their future. That those treaties are what? The supreme law of the land. And whoever controls the Moroccan treaties controls the destiny of the citizens of the United States. So you have to watch how France is controlling a Moroccan treaty and see how the United States of America has to adhere to what's happening because of the treaty. This is what Moors have to start understanding. When we have our state rights, we control the treaties. We control the destination and the intentional future of the United States. They must comply to constant court orders. That's why France is talking about courts. They talked about Moors, number one, then they came back and started talking about constant courts. You see what's happening? You got to catch what's happening. This is how Moors have to study. What's this all about? Moors and constant court. Now they're going to start getting in a little bit more into the estate, the land. Okay? That France is requesting what? The new French courts in Morocco be recognized at the earliest possible date. What do they ask the United States of America to do? To recognize the brand new jurisdiction. But when they say recognize, that means they want the United States of America to put together legislation, pass it through the House of Representatives, the Senate, send it up to the executive branch of the United States, and consent and ratify and understand the new legislation that controls the law of the land.
In consular court.
And consular court. Okay?
So that became Title 22.
Somewhat. Mm-hmm. The public law. Yes. It's all a corollary, for sure. Title 22 is corollary to what's going on in the early 1900s. It all ties together. Right? Public relations. Foreign relations, I should say. Foreign relations. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, good job, Mr. Pointer. Okay. All right. Okay, listen, Moors, and especially Moors at home. Now, look what they get ready to start talking about. Turning first. What's first on the list? They keep going back to the Moors. Listen, go ahead, Mother.
Turning first to the subject of the revision of the protege lists mentioned in Mr. Peretti's note of September 14, it is proper to state that the protection of native Moors in Morocco by this government rests upon its treaty with Morocco in 1836 and the Madrid Convention of 1880. The relevant part of the Treaty of 1836 is found in Article 15, which reads as follows.
Stop. Okay. Now, right here it says Article 15, but it should really say Article 16 because then they quoted Article 16 of the 1880 Madrid. Okay? But let's go back up. Especially new Moors, young Moors, you got to understand what's happening. Keep in mind, this is United States of America talking. Listen to me, young Moors. This is the United States of America talking. They know your obligations that you're stateless. So that's why they get ready to start talking about you stateless Moors, that the United States of America still has control over you. They get ready to start talking about how to use the treaties to hold on to Moors. So what do Moors learn from this? How do you use the treaties to get back into statehood? So you have control over your own intentional future. So you can get back to the triple principles. Listen to how the United States talks about you. Listen. Turning first to the subject of the revision of the protege list. Who's the protege list? Stateless Moors list mentioned in Mr. Peretti's note of September 14. It is proper to state, going down, that the protection of native Moors, now they're telling you who the proteges are, the native Moors. So the United States of America knows that you're Moors, young Moors, especially young Moors out there. United States of America knows that you're the native Moors. This is United States of America talking, young Moors. That the native Moors in Morocco, where's Morocco? You're standing on it. Mm-hmm. United States of America is talking about your land in Morocco. The native Moors are in Morocco, young Moors. That the protection of native Moors in Morocco by this government rests upon its treaty with Morocco of 1836. By this government? United States of America. Mm-hmm. United States of America is talking about you. They know that you're stateless, Moors. They know you're native. They know you're Moor. But they know that the Moors in the 21st century have not made a proper claim to statehood. They know the Moors have not been following the instructions of the Sultan. And they're holding on to you as a native Moor who is stateless. And when you're stateless, you come under the protections of the United States government. Let's start all over. that the protections of native Moors in Morocco by this government rest upon its treaty with Morocco of 1836, and that the Madrid Convention of 1880. The relevant part of the Treaty of 1836 is found in Article 15, which reads as follows. Now, here's what I think. I think the Article 15 is correct. When Moors go back and read Article 16 of the Treaty of Madrid, it'll say this right here. Merchants of both countries shall employ only such interpreters and such other persons to assist them in other business as they shall think proper. What's happening? I think the United States of America changed this. Either this is a typo right here, it should say Article 16, or it's not a typo, and it does say Article 15, but they didn't quote Article 15, because Article 15 talks about Moors coming back to the entire submission of the Empire of Morocco. Meaning that Moors got to come back and consent to a Moroccan government to get their rights under statehood. Okay? Why is this important to understand? Why am I pointing this out? Because the United States of America knows exactly what the Moors' obligations is to come back and consent to a Moroccan government.
It is 15.
So it says Article 15, but they really quote Article 16 right there.
It says 15. Quotes it.
15 quotes that?
Uh-huh.
Merchants of both countries?
Yeah.
And the Treaty of Madrid? Article 15? No, sir.
Okay. Article 1836, Article 15.
No, I was talking about Article 36. I mean 1880,
Yeah.
right here.
Oh, Article 1880.
See right here? 1880, Article 15.
No, it says the relevant part of the Treaty of 1836.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, 1836, you're absolutely right. 1836, Article 15, you're absolutely correct. I got confused talking about 1880, Article 15, because I thought they quoted that. But the reality is 1836, that is correct when they quote this, okay? Article 15. All right, let's continue. So what's happening? The United States of America is claiming what? Merchants of both countries shall employ only such interpreters and such other persons to assist them in their business as they shall think proper. What's the United States of America saying right there? The United States of America gets to make the decision about who gets to oversee the protege list, who gets to come up with the list, etc. because of the treaty. You see how the United States of America is using the treaty to their advantage? So the Moors get back into statehood. Now you get to take advantage of your own list of who's on your list. That's what Moors have to understand. When you get back in statehood, you control these treaties now. Okay? Let's continue. Right here, Mo.
The Convention of 1880 declares in Article 1 that the protection of native Moors is based on the British and Spanish treaties with Morocco and on the Convention of 1863 between France, Morocco, and other powers, with the modifications introduced by the present convention, and stipulates in Article 16 that the authorities of Morocco will recognize no protection of any kind whatever, save such as is expressly provided for in this convention.
Okay, let's stop right there. Okay, what's happening? I know it's a lot of information for Moors at home, but Moors got to be able to keep up. They're talking about your Moroccan treaties, so Moors have to learn how to comprehend what the other Christian powers talk about when they're talking about your treaty. Okay? Got to have some patience, Moors. Okay. So now they start talking about 1863 treaties, okay? And other treaties. You'll learn they're going to have a lot of reference points about a lot of treaties, okay? So what's happening? It said what? The authorities of Morocco will recognize no protection of any kind, whatever, save such as expressly provided for in this convention. What's happening? They're trying to say that Morocco couldn't recognize the protections of stateless Moors, that only the protectorate country could recognize who's on the protectorate list because of treaties. Okay? Especially go back and read 1880. It talks about that the country gets to pick the list. So the United States of America is pulling a power play saying, we get to come up with the protectorate list, not France. Okay? That must be understood. Okay.
That will stand?
Yes, because that's what's in the treaty. Okay?
But if the Sultan turned all of the powers over to France, wouldn't it be France that has that control over the list?
Okay, so that's similar to the question you asked. Now France is on the other side, okay? France has a pen to control Moroccan treaties, but the United States of America also is a part of those bilateral treaties, and now since they're a country that's a part of the bilateral treaties, they get to pick a list of the protégés that's in their jurisdiction. France only had jurisdiction over Moors that was in the jurisdiction of Morocco, but the United States of America is claiming protégés in the jurisdiction of America. So they get to pick their list. So they're fighting over these treaties, the interpretations of treaties, okay? Now do you understand why the League of Nations had to come out in 1920? Do you understand now why the United Nations of 1945 had to come out and the ICJ had to now be established? Because both sides are trying to interpret the treaties however they want it. You have to bring in a referee, the ICJ judges.
So in 1933, Resolution 75, that gave the United States a list. They say, oh, here's our protégés. That's all they had to do.
List, exactly. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, this, keep in mind, it's the United States talking, okay? Okay, well, after a
careful examination of the several articles of the Madrid Convention relative to the protection of American protégés, the Department is unable to reach the conclusion that the Moorish government enjoys the right ultimately to decide upon the persons who may become protégés of this government. On the contrary, Article 2 of the Convention provides that foreign representatives at the head of a legation may select their interpreters and employees from among the subjects of Morocco or others. And Article 3 provides that consular officers shall be allowed to select their employees.
Stop. Okay. What we just learned here. The United States of America is making a claim to the protégés who are stateless. They have jurisdiction over protégés. How did they get jurisdiction over protégés? It came from the Treaty of Madrid. Protections in Morocco. The United States of America had protection status over stateless Moors. So now you fast forward to 1914. Now, the United States of America said, well, we get to choose who's on the list. France can't choose. The French zone can't choose. It's up to the United States of America to choose who's on the list, okay? Let's read it real quick. After a careful examination of the several articles of the Madrid Convention, see, they're using treaties. What treaty are they using? Treaty of Madrid, a Moroccan treaty. Moors had to learn how to use their own Moroccan treaty. A convention relative to the protection of American protégés. They're telling you the Treaty of Madrid is about what? Stateless Moors were protected by the American government. Moors are stateless. The department is unable to reach the conclusion that the Moorish government enjoys the right ultimately to decide upon the persons who may become protégés of this government. The United States of America is using that treaty to their advantage. On the contrary, Article 2 of the Convention provides that foreign representatives at the head of a legislation may select their interpreters and employees from among the subjects of Morocco or others. See how the United States of America, this is quote unquote, they're using the provisions of the treaties to hold on to protégés legally. So when Moors come back into statehood, you have to learn how to use your treaties to your advantage. We're going to talk about the protégé list in future classes as it relates to XREL. We'll talk about that.
So what does it do? Can you remind me again, the quotes? What does that mean?
Okay, so this quote, right? Quote unquote, foreign representatives at the head of a legislation may select their interpreters and employees from among the subjects of Morocco or others. So therefore, the senators, House of Representatives, the executive branch, mayors, governors, etc., they can put together a protégé list of stateless Moors that's deemed as citizens of the United States of America?
The census.
The census, right? So now they get to claim the souls of Moors to put on the list. In other words, they're telling France, you can't choose who's going to be on the list. Only the United States of America can choose who's on the list or not. Let's continue. Okay, and Article 3 provides that consular officers shall be allowed to select their employees. They're talking about this consular court. Keep in mind now, the French Republic is what? A state. The United States of America are states. These are state-on-state disputes. These are states now trying to look at what's called the interpretations of treaties. And Moors are stateless. They don't have a state, so they can't enforce their own rights at this time. By article?
By Article 5 of the same convention, the government of Morocco recognizes the right of ministers, chargés d'affaires, and other representatives, which is granted to them by treaties to select the persons whom they employ. In regard to the list of protected persons, the convention is equally precise, as appears by Articles 7 and 8, which read as follows.
Okay, so before we read Articles 7 and 8, the United States of America is using Moroccan treaties to their advantage. That's the point of why we're reading this right now. When Moors get back into statehood, you can use these treaties for your defense and offense the same way the United States of America is using it for their defense. Moors will start learning how to use their own treaties. Okay? Now watch this. Guess what's getting ready to happen in Article 7? Okay, listen.
This is a which Treaty of Madrid?
Treaty of Madrid, Article 7. Okay? Okay, Article 7. So this was the United States of America. They're quoting this. Article 7 of the Treaty of Madrid. Listen.
Foreign representatives shall inform the Sultan's Minister of Foreign Affairs in writing of any selections of any employee made by them. They shall furnish annually to the said minister a list of the names of the persons protected by them or by their agents throughout the states of the Sultan of Morocco. This list shall be transmitted to the local authorities, who shall consider as persons enjoying protection only those whose names are contained therein.
Did you catch what just happened? I keep telling the Moors, you keep talking about enforce the Constitution. Article 6, Clause 2 talks about treaties, supreme law of the land. Okay? You put this down, you go back to treaties, and treaties talk about states, state rights. Article 7. Foreign representatives shall inform the Sultan Minister of Foreign Affairs in writing of any selections of any employee made by them. They shall furnish annually to the said minister a list of the names of the persons protected by them or by their agents throughout the states of the Sultan of Morocco.
The census and the social security number is the employee number.
Yes. So what our Sayed Raha just said, quietly said, when the United States of America does the census every 10 years, they're collecting a list of names of people who call themselves Negro, Black, Colored, and African American. And that is the protege list that the United States of America is putting together all the time to talk about these protected people that are branded with non-de-gears and misnomers. Those are the proteges.
And the social security number.
And the social security number is a part of the branding as well.
Employee.
That way they can keep up with it. Social security number, your employee ID, etc. That's the proteges list. All right? So let's read it again. This part right here. They shall furnish annually to the said minister the list of the names of the persons protected by them or by their agents throughout the states. The states, Moors. The states. The states, Moors. Throughout the states of who? the Sultan. The Sultan, Moors. The Sultan. States of the Sultan.
The states in the land of Morocco.
Yes. So the Sultan owns all of the states of the United States, and the Sultan oversees any Moorish government states, because the treaties oversee all states in Morocco. That must be understood, Moors. Moors have to get back into statehood, because the Sultan has states. Okay. What other point do I want to make about that Article 7? The colonists know that the Moors are stateless. That must be understood. This is not AMPAC's hyperbole. This is not AMPAC's idea. These are well-settled principles of treaties. Moors keep saying enforce the Constitution. Enforce the Constitution. Okay. Article 3, Section 2, diversity of state. Then where's your state, Moors? My question to the Moors is this. What is the name of your state provincial government? That while you enforcing through your state provincial government the triple principles. The Sultan has states. Okay, what's the Moor states? That must be understood. Treaty of Madrid. Constitution, Article 6, Section 2. Treaty, supreme law of the land. Okay, you put this down, you go to treaties. Treaties talk about statehood. Let's continue. Article 8.
Consular officers shall transmit each year to the authorities of the district in which they reside a list bearing their seal of the persons protected by them. These authorities shall transmit it to the Minister of Foreign Affairs to the end that, if it be not conformable to the regulations, the representatives at Tangier may be informed of the fact. A consular officer shall be required to give immediate information of any changes that may have taken place among the persons protected by his consulate. Regarding the appointment of protégés for signal services, the Convention provides, Article 16, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs at Tangier shall be previously informed of the nature of the services and notified of the intention to award them, in order that he may, if need be, present his observations thereon. Yet the final decision shall be reserved for the government to which the service shall have been rendered.
Okay. Thank you, Mother. Negroes, blacks, coloreds, African Americans are protégés. That must be understood. The United States of America has the legal authorization to hold on to you as protégés. Why? Because Moors are stateless. Continue.
Concerning the protection of the native employees of private persons, the Treaty of 1836 appears to contain no stipulation, but in Article 9 and 10 of the Convention of 1880, there are found the following provisions. Article 9. Servants, farmers, and other native employees of native secretaries and interpreters shall not enjoy protection. The same shall be the case with Moorish employees or servants of foreign subjects. Nevertheless, the local authorities shall not arrest an employee or servant of a native officer in the service of a legation or consulate or of a foreign subject or protected person, without having notified the authority upon which he is dependent. If a subject of Morocco in the service of a foreign subject shall kill or wound any person or violate his domicile, he shall be arrested immediately, but the diplomatic or consular authority under which he shall be notified without delay.
Okay, what's happening? Article 9. Moors on a protégé list. They talking about you, Moors. They call you protégés. They call you what? Moorish employees
or servants
or servants or subjects
of foreign subjects.
You got to understand something that's going on here. This is the United States talking about you. They know exactly who you are, Moors. But they know you cannot make a competent claim because you're stateless. Why are you stateless? Because Moors are not talking about the treaties and how to enforce them. The treaties talk about states. So as we start to wrap up, and we'll continue this reading, because we'll finish reading this because I want Moors to understand how the United States of America is talking about you as Moors. And how they're using your Moroccan Moorish treaties to hold on to you because they know that you suffer what's called cognitive dissonance. They know that you don't know anything about how to enforce your own rights. They know that you don't know anything about the triple principle. Why don't Moors know? Why don't we know about the Act of Algeciras 1906? Because Moors aren't teaching about it. Moors aren't talking about it. And those Moors that are talking about it, they want to charge you to talk about it. So only a handful of Moors know about the 1906 Act of Algeciras. Only a handful of Moors know about France versus United States of America 1952. Because if all the Moors knew about the Act of Algeciras, they would automatically start understanding their rights. They would start understanding what's called statehood. If the Moors were studying international law, they would understand statehood. The Moors keep saying, enforce the Constitution. The Constitution is about states. The Constitution is about treaties. And when there's a dispute between states, you use what to determine that dispute? You use treaties and consular court. But if the Moors don't have a state, then you can't enforce consular court. Everything the Moors have been doing has been an excellent exercise. But it's time now for Moors to get into what they call knowledge, wisdom on how to enforce your rights. Why do I say that? Because Moors got pain. Moors just want to fix this, especially young Moors. Young Moors don't care about whether you're a religious Moor or you're a civic Moor. They don't care. Only thing the young Moors care about is, hey man, how can we fix this? How do we get the paperwork to stick? Why aren't the colonists paying us any attention? I wrote all my abridgment of jurisdiction, quo warranto, habeas corpus. I'm doing affidavits and writs. These people ignoring me. They're usurping me. The young Moors just want to find a way to get the answer to the test. They don't care whether you're religious Moor or civic Moor. They care about the answers to the test. And what's the answer to the test, young Moors? Statehood. So the young Moors have an obligation. You got to study, study, study. Don't worry about what the other Moors are talking about. Don't even worry about what AMPAC's talking about. You have an obligation to study statehood as it relates to international law. Every Moor must come back into statehood. That's what this is all about. United States of America. It's about states. The young Moors got pain, and they just want to fix this. So young Moors, listen to me. AMPAC will continue to be a beacon on behalf of giving you the answers to the test for free.